Welcome back to WNST, Towson, Baltimore, and Baltimore Positive. And yes, we're still broadcasting in very, very powerful mono AM 1570 in Towson, Maryland. I love having a guest on that write books and write books about stuff that are insider, and especially an insider who was in a world that I was very much inside of. I have said it's the best book ever written on football. He has topped that somehow with a New York Times bestseller. Thank You For Your Servitude. I don't track him down much. He lives down the road. At some point, I'll actually meet him and be a fanboy and have a crab cake and a beer and BS about things. Mark Leibovich joins us right now to not talk Patriots or Ravens or press credentials or any of that stuff. But, dude, congratulations on another just incredible book from insider access that's almost like real life Borat. I mean, I mean that in the highest
Real
praise.
life Borat, did you say?
Real life, getting behind the
I
scenes.
love it.
Yeah, and like real life board. I would say you are America's bullshit exterminator. That's what I would call you, Mark Leibovich.
I like it. I'm putting that on the paperback little subject line there. That's perfect. Well, Nestor, it's good to be with you. Thank you for having me. It's always good to be on. And I'm sorry you're not being treated in the manner in which you are deserving by the hometown team, but we don't have to get into that.
Yeah, I mean, that's my story to tell later. That's over a beer and a crab cake somewhere in Howard County in the winter. Right. So for your book and for where the state of the world is, every single day, the stories you tell in your book sort of affect the electorate as we get up on an election that, I mean, I've driven all over the state of Maryland. I'm astonished pulling into convenience stores in Western Maryland where everything is a gun and an F Biden and like, it's an amazing time. We've come a long way since this town, right?
Yeah, this town, I mean, in retrospect that was the first book I did on Washington, and it just seemed, it was seen as a takedown when it came out 10 years ago, but that was for much lower stakes. I mean, now the country is, people talk about civil war and threats to democracy, and I don't think it's necessarily overheated or anything. No, there's a lot of twisted stuff out there, and this book I wrote was basically, it took aim at, I think one of our two major parties, which has been complicit in a lot of this and has really sort of put our way of life into to some jeopardy. So now these are scary times, but you can always be scary. You can always try to be, at least get some laughs and try to at least exhaust the subjects that are deserving of scorn and ridicule with scorn and ridicule. So, like the NFL, Washington's a swamp, right? And you sort of try to get inside and, hey, I'm all for bullshit extermination because God knows there's plenty of it in a lot of the worlds we travel in.
I think the amazing part is the ability for you to have a Lindsey Graham, or even in your football book, a Jerry Jones. And I consider myself a reporter and a journalist, which is probably why I've been thrown out by both franchises here at this point, right, because they fear me. For whatever reason, I'm not safe because I would have the audacity to tell the truth. Amazing, right? Yeah. But these guys tell you the truth, and realizing that, and I always see that old David Bowie video about the internet and how it's going to change the paradigm and, all that. The last 20 years in information and silos and, the voter or Lindsey Graham's not reading your book or watching this hit or any of that. And that's really an issue when you go to these places and find out how little information there is. I mean, I had places with Anderson Cooper, CNN sucks things on that you could not get cell service in the parking lot. So I'm thinking to myself, you have no access to the outside world. So the internet gives and it takes away, but it really has been the organizer for whatever the chaos is, I think.
Yeah, no, it's true. I mean, what's interesting about like social media and the internet is it's kind of democratized everything. It's made, anyone can weigh in. Everyone from the peanut gallery all of a sudden has like their own little media company, right? And there's no barrier to entry. However, kind of, what's the word? Kind of counterintuitively, it also kind of makes for a smaller world. It makes you you can choose your own silos, right? And you choose your own little, neighborhoods and cul-de-sacs, and you only sort of stick to people who agree with you and who care about the same things as you. And, it kind of narrows our vision instead of expanding it in some ways, at least in some ways. So, no, I don't know. It's really, but people are really dug in. People are really kind of circling the wagons. And I think, just like sports, like politics, everyone sort of chooses their tribe these days. And I think the internet and social media exacerbate that.
Mark Leibovich is our guest. It's always a pleasure to have him on from the capital of the free world, just 38 miles to the south. Um, so I read your book. The big game came to me. Obviously, I know of your work and your writing. The football book comes to me. Really touched me because I was at all of those owners' meetings and all of those draft things in Indiana, all the places you
Yeah,
were. We were in the same room, and
yeah,
you're just taking notes. And a year and a half later, I'm reading about it. But I was pissing myself laughing. I remember reading the book in various places. I was chasing Springsteen around one year reading your book, and my wife kept saying, "You're laughing so much. I've never seen you stare at a book and laugh." And I think to myself,
awesome,
are
man.
you a comedian? I mean, like, there's a part
Oh,
of this where you say you take a lighter touch. Man, it's hard to
yeah,
have a lighter touch on Lindsey Graham and Marco Rubio when
yeah,
it is so obviously performative and
right, yeah.
it's
You
easy
know,
to poke fun at it. I mean, Bill Maher's been doing it for 20 years, right?
yeah, I mean, I mean, look, I think it's great to make people laugh. I don't think I'm a comedian. I mean, I try not to be a comedian because I think, this stuff is serious. It's for keeps. It's about the country. It's about democracy. It's about people's lives. And, I try never to lose touch with that. I mean, this is serious stuff, and there are good guys and bad guys, mostly bad guys in at least the most recent book. And um, you know, uh, football at the end of the day is a game, right? I mean, it's big business. If you play the game, you're putting your life at risk, you're putting your health at risk, your long-term health at risk, certainly. um, so you take that seriously, but look, these are circuses. Like, life is filled with circuses, and you got to sort of separate the spectacle, the humor from the substance, but also being aware that it is all happening at once in some ways. So I don't know. I try to at some point, on some level, have fun, because otherwise I would just like put my head in the oven.
Um, Thank You For Your Servitude is the book. It's a New York Times bestseller. Please go check it out. You can follow Mark obviously out on social media and his work at the New York Times. And I don't know what your next book is, or if you're allowed to tell me.
I don't
It
either,
may.
man. No, I
I
got
hope
no
it's not on
plans.
Washed Up Sports Radio, guys. I'm in on it at this point.
No,
Um, but the concept of the book, right? Like, big game, you and I discussed this, and I tell the story about the Tom Brady thing in San Francisco and whatever, and you sort of fell into Access and thinking that there was some sort of behind the curtain of how these people
right,
act. And
right,
5 years later on, if we pull back Daniel Snyder and just down the list of the Deshaun Watts, just the
yeah,
filth of the
yeah,
NFL, right? And even on my own personal level, maybe there'll be my own big game at some
yeah.
point.
You should write it, man.
Well, thank you, and I
You totally
maybe
should.
I
I'd read it.
shall.
You
Read my
shall.
first 20,000 words on the press credential being taken away, and then you decide if I'm a writer. And I know it needs to be better edited. But for your book and the notion that this is going to be the topic, that you're
Hmm.
going to take Trump enablers and say, which is the most amazing thing to me, because like, Trump's up moving storms into Alabama, he's injecting bleach, he's selling
Yeah,
off Greenland. I mean, shit that your grandfather, if he were back, you'd have to explain to him after a couple of world wars and Hitler and like just all of it. Like, are you kidding me? I mean, there was a point, dude. That dude sat there for 4 years having press conferences that just blew my mind. I paced the floor in downtown Baltimore saying, "Are we going to survive this level
yeah,
of malfeasance, ignorance on the take, hotel down the street, milk in the South, like all of this?" And I'm
yeah,
like, damn, if Leibovich would just get in there, maybe one day we'd have something here. And
yeah.
you've gone in and sat at the hotel bar for a little while.
I did real hard work, right? No, I mean, what I wanted to do here is, I didn't want to try to like write the next, you know, big Trump opus, right? The book that understands or psychoanalyzes Donald Trump any better than the next guy.
Well, Woodward did that, right?
I don't know. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I don't think there's a hell of a lot there, to be honest with you. I mean, I just don't care that much. And there's so much White House intrigue that we've been reading about or not reading about and tuned out about. I wanted to focus on, first of all, the people who made him possible. I think the Republican Party gets off a little bit easy because they could have stopped him at any time, and privately, and this is all in the book. They talk about what kind of a dumbass he is and how dangerous he is and how scary he is. But he's the president of the United States, and he's the most popular person in their party, and he can make or break their career. So they kind of kiss his ass. So the Trump Hotel Bar, which is like the capital of Washington for 4 years during the Trump years. I mean, he's got this private business. There's a beautiful ballroom at this new hotel that he opens up. It's not his anymore. He sold it to the Waldorf. But this was where the whole White House staff and the government kind of hung out after hours, and they sort of were buying each other meals and greasing each other's palms, and lobbyists were there. Trump himself, like he went to one restaurant for 4 years outside of the White House, and that was the steakhouse at the Trump Hotel. So he'd peacock in, and it'd be this spectacle. He'd wanted this big applauded entry from all the MAGA heads who were in town, and it was just really quite a scene. And we'd always order the same thing. You'd get a 40-ounce tomahawk steak, shrimp cocktail, French fries, chocolate cake for dessert, and always a little bucket of chilled Diet Coke, because the diet, right? Got to watch the waistline. So but yeah, it was quite a spectacle, and that was, I think, a good place to sort of watch this circus play out for 4 years. And look, if you're a reporter and you can get paid to drink on the job, why not, right?
Mark, could I have just gone down there and sat at the bar with you on any of these given nights? I mean, I
Yeah.
had looked at it and thought of, dude, I mean, it was 4 years just living through it, and then the plague came. Yeah, my wife had just had cancer twice before like all of this mess. But I
Yeah.
thought to myself, this stench is happening. It was in front of everyone, right? Like
Yeah.
it was out there every day. He was selling off the hotel, and he had it was just all BS, right? And it
Yeah.
was very obvious what was happening. But I thought,
So
like, that's got to be like a Hollywood. They're only letting in Republican. Like how did
yeah.
you wind up in there, and how often did you go? Because I mean, that's a brilliant just
Yeah.
idea to be a fly on the wall there any day. I would have
Yeah.
done it for entertainment and vomit purposes before, like, I don't know, a Styx concert at the Warner Theater or something. You know what I
Yeah,
mean?
there was plenty of vomit. I mean, not literally, but figurative vomit on my part. I mean, just to be clear, this is not the place I would choose to hang out if I weren't working or looking to write a book. I mean, but yeah, I mean, it's a public place. You can just walk in, go to a bar. I mean, they can't. I mean, they would kick a lot of people out after a while because it's a private business, and like if they sort of recognize reporters. I mean, put it this way. I mean, I was lucky not to be kicked out. There were a lot of my colleagues who were clearly casing the joint, for journalistic purposes, perfectly legitimate Amendment, reasons, were not permitted entry. But no, yeah, you could have gone in. I mean, sure. I mean, it's also, it's overpriced, but it's a nice place to get get a drink and, good food and everything.
Well, how often were you? I mean,
About once a week or so, maybe once every couple of weeks.
okay, for 4
Not
years.
that often for 4 years. Yeah, but it adds up. You can fill a bunch of notebooks. You can, I did a lot of my interviews there. Like I would meet so-and-so for breakfast or drinks or something after work. And there was always a bunch of reporters there. I mean, it was, in a weird way, it was kind of like a Cheers during the Trump years. Except for, instead of Sam and Norm, like joking about Norm's tab, you'd have like, some Saudi lobbyist and a White House person joking about how many tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of dollars he should pay the Trump organization to get a meeting at the White House or something. So, it was definitely corrupt, but I mean, it was all happening largely out in the open, surprisingly out in the open.
Well, so, yeah, I mean, it was out in the open for just a kid in Baltimore following along on Twitter in the middle of a plague as to how this was going down. Mark Leibovich is here. The book is Thank You For Your Servitude. All things the servitude of the 4 years of the Trump administration on the Republican side. A little football and a little just back channel football. The after effects of big game. It's now been 5-6 years since you wrote the book. Where the league is, big picture. Just are you still watching the Patriots? I mean, are you into the game?
Yeah.
Yeah,
I am. I watch, I've been less engaged the last couple of years. Partly because I wasn't writing a book anymore, so I didn't really have to care. I'm, like I grew up a Pats fan. I grew up there, so it's sort of a disease. They're not a very interesting team these days. They're not a very good team. Brady left. The pandemic year was rough. I hated those crowd-free games. I mean, that was in retrospect kind of eerie.
I went to one of those, dude. I went to several actually, but I flew to Houston week 2. In
So
the empty blimp, there are 38 people.
yeah,
I'm wearing a mask. There's 6 reporters in the, press
yeah, it's
box.
weird,
It
right?
was spooky weird.
So weird. Yeah, I didn't I mean it was terrible on TV. I mean, you realize how much you need that atmosphere even when you're sitting at home. Um but that happened to coincide with like the Cam Newton year for my team. So and look, it hasn't been but having said that, football's still king. I mean, people just and they continue to like be a very poorly run organization, and Roger Goodell is, I don't think a great commissioner, and you got Deshaun Watson, as you mentioned, you got, these health and safety. I mean, it's a corrupt organization. However, the game is just amazing. It's like heroin. It's like America is just addicted to football, and unfortunately, I'm one of the junkies, and I haven't stopped watching.
God, I don't have you on much, and you just leave me a nugget like they're a corrupt organization, and I'm
They
like,
are.
hmm.
They are. It's
You
it's
know,
like an
that's not
oligarchy.
said much on ESPN or on NFL
No,
Network or like,
you know,
and it's not said much in the Washington Post or the New York Times, other than when
right.
they're on trial for something and doing something to screw over cheerleaders, literally and figuratively, and just employing Deshaun Watson to the tune of $231 million, which has greatly affected my football team's ability to sign its football quarterback. Right.
Right.
So
Yeah.
how it's affected the business, but they don't care. They don't care about
No, they
anything.
don't care. They're going to be fine. Everyone. I mean, look, they're billionaires. Billionaires are not like you and me. I mean, I'm assuming you're not a billionaire. I'm not a billionaire. It's maybe I'm wrong. Maybe yeah, I could be wrong. But it's an oligarchy, right? I mean, these guys are not. They protect each other. It's a protection racket. The fact that Dan Snyder is still has the controls the Washington team is just stunning to me. But it isn't, because he probably is threatening to sue, and he probably knows a ton of secrets that other owners have that he's going to threaten to expose, and so he's probably safe for now. But that's the way the business operates. And again, if you want
Extortion in the middle, huh? Like, hey, if you don't do this, you gotta, like, hey, I know
to,
things. I got John Gruden's emails. Like that.
exactly.
Bob Kraft, I know where he got massages. I like
I know, right?
that's where they are at this point, right? When they're moving
Yeah, it is.
franchises and screwing St. Louis, and who's
Yeah,
ever going to be a Chargers fan, right?
yeah, I know. We just, yeah, it's true. I mean, yeah, I mean, I look, I would actually become a Chargers fan if they moved back to San Diego. I mean, I liked the San Diego Chargers. That's a good little football town, and of course, they got screwed because the Spanos family made more money in LA, and now they're the LA Chargers, and no one goes to watch them except if they're watching the opposing team. So,
Hey, dude, I walked off the set because I collect belt buckles, and this is my childhood belt buckle. So I
oh,
just,
I like those.
so I'm keenly aware of the pain and the physical, seeing
Yeah,
my father cry twice in his life, and once was the day of but I've given up the Irsay thing. If Eddie Vedder can look nicely upon Oklahoma City after the Sonics thing, I can make nice with Jim Irsay. Jim
yeah,
Irsay's doing nice things for mental health awareness and putting
he
on good
is.
concerts with the
And he's a
guys from
son.
REM.
He's not Tiger. He was the son. He wasn't, he wasn't there. I will tell you this though. This was tacky. I think this is in big game. When you go to a game in Indianapolis, they have like a little kind of hype video at the beginning, and they have highlights of like Peyton Manning, great moments in Indianapolis Colts history. But the first scene in that hype video is the Mayflower trucks leaving Baltimore in the middle of the night, and I I called bullshit on that in the book. I mean, like, can you imagine? Like, they shouldn't be boasting about that. That shouldn't be. I mean, it shouldn't be a part of their story that they're celebrating. They should feel great shame over that. They should be apologizing every which way. And I thought that was just weird. So anyway, yeah. Other than that, yeah, Jim Irsay, he's not his father, so good for him.
I've told the story back at the owners' meetings at the Biltmore about 15 years ago, right after '06 when they won the Super Bowl. Indy had finally, they were clean. They'd had their parade and all that. Steve Bisciotti and I and Jim Irsay went for an hour-long walk off the Biltmore at the owners' meetings discussing the records of the Baltimore Colts, because Steve was trying to make the fans happy. He had just bought the team, and the fans here were really pissed going to Canton and seeing
Yeah,
Johnny U in Indianapolis and saying, why wouldn't you just sort of swap things out, start things
yeah,
over?
right.
And you know what Jim said? And you know how Jim's like sort of all that sort of, touchy feely. Jim's like, I can't deny the history. The history is that we moved the team, and
All right, good.
I can't deny what really happened. So that would be his answer to that. And I don't know that I appreciate that or don't appreciate,
It's
but it is
honest.
the truth. I mean,
It's the
if
truth.
you're grounded in reality, that's at least a
Yeah.
start, right?
Yeah, I would if I were the league, first of all, I would give Baltimore the Colts. Like, I mean, just change their name to the Colts. Like, just change Raven to Colts. I mean, same franchise, same owner, same stadium, and make the Indianapolis team the Ravens. Now, I get the Edgar Allan Poe thing that's got its own, or give them a different name. But the Baltimore Colts, like the Cleveland Browns, should still exist. Hey, I got to run, man.
See you, man. Appreciate you. Mark Leibovich, go buy the book. Thank you for your servitude. And buy Big Game, too, with paperback, wherever the hell it is. It's the best book on football ever written. Appreciate you, man.
Thanks,
Mark's
man.
out. I'm in. We are WNST, AM 1570, Towson, Baltimore. And we never stop talking Baltimore positive.